So identity, I wanted to start off the day talking about identity is one of the core things. And it really, why is identity important? And I would say the most important identity that we could possibly take on is that of a follower of Christ. It's the identity of who we are in Christ. And that's the most important identity that we can have. But there's a lot of other identities that we can take on as well. And identity is incredibly powerful. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Let's see if I can get my screen to work. There we go. So identity in psychology, the term identity is most commonly used to describe personal identity or the distinctive qualities or traits that make an individual unique. Identities are strongly associated with self-concept, self-image, one's mental model of oneself, self-esteem, and individuality. And so who or what are you? That's your identity, right? It's how you identify. And in our society, especially over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, people have gotten really crazy about identity, even changing their pronouns. Like, I'm a he, him, I'm a she, her, I'm a they, them, right? Like we are so encroached in, and engrossed in our identity. And what do we identify as? And I think sometimes we miss out on some of the core things that are even going on in society that it's like people are confused. They need to know who they are, what they are. I mean, some people are identifying as like animals now. Like, I'm a cat, I'm a dog, I'm a, like, what are you identifying as, right? But who or what you are determines how you show up, how you make decisions, what you value. Of course, there's some typos in all of this, so excuse that and just ignore them. What you value, how you identify, and what you prioritize. Your identity shapes how you make decisions and live your life. When you take on the identity of something, you start to act as if you are that thing. And there's certain things that you will do or not do based on your identity. So I'm going to give you one example from early on in my life. And this is one of the identities that I've taken on through the course of my life is I am a missionary. And some of you guys on this call have taken on that identity. I am a missionary, right? And so at 10 years old, I shared that picture with you earlier of my family right before we moved to Haiti. At 10 years old, I took on that identity. Even before moving to Haiti, I took on the identity of the missionary. As soon as we made the commitment and said, we are going to go and serve overseas, I took on the identity of missionary. And so I wasn't even living in Haiti yet, but I started making choices and decisions associated with what do missionaries do, right? And so I started saying, well, what does a missionary do? I had read books my mom had read to us as kids, and books about missionaries doing different things. And one of the books that really stood out to me as I was taking on this identity of missionary was a book that I read about a couple of missionaries that went to some place in like Alaska or somewhere crazy, but they didn't speak English, right? And they had to learn the language and they had to translate the language. And I actually went to a Wycliffe Center in North Carolina when I was a kid. I went on a field trip with my school, and these are the people that translate the Bible. And so the concept that I had as a kid of somebody who was a missionary is that they learn the language. And so at 10 years old, as soon as I started identifying as a missionary and I took on the identity of missionary, I knew the first thing that I had to do was learn the language because that's what missionaries do. Missionaries learn the language and learn how to speak the language of the people that they're going to reach. And so at 10 years old, I like totally engrossed myself in the language and in Creole. And within 6 months, I was speaking Creole fluently. I engaged in the mission. When we actually moved to Haiti and we were on the mission field, I was engaged in the mission because I was a missionary. That's what missionaries do. They go out in the village and they talk with people and they serve people and they jump in and help with construction projects and they do all of these different things. My identity was not missionary kid. My identity was not the kid of the people whose parents are a missionary. I took on the identity of missionary. If I had just taken on the identity of missionary kid, I would have just stayed in my house all day, would have never learned the language, would have never engaged in the mission, wouldn't have done anything, right? But because I took on the identity of missionary, I started thinking like a missionary. I started saying, what does a missionary do? Those are the things that I'm going to do. And so I learned and became the thing. I got my school done. I remember as a kid, 12, 13 years old, I would get my school done between 5 a.m. and 10 a.m. every single day so that I could go and serve in the organization because I was a missionary. That's what I was supposed to do. That was part of the identity, was serving. And so school was like, I knew I had to do school, but my identity really wasn't student. My identity was missionary. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get school out of the way because I'm a missionary. I need to be out there serving. I found ways to help, to teach, to lead, to translate. I learned to play the guitar. Like that was another one of the things. I saw all these missionaries as a kid. I'm like, they all play guitar. So I guess if I'm a missionary, I need to learn to play guitar because that's what missionaries do, right? I started to take on the identity more and more. I would speak on stages or at events. Even at 12 years old, I remember being out in the communities and I was speaking, I was leading, I was sharing, I was teaching people about Jesus because that was the identity of a missionary, right? And so identity is an incredibly powerful thing that when we can take on an identity, we start to become that thing. We identify as that thing. We do what that kind of person does. And so when we have an identity shift, it's incredibly powerful, right? It affects every single part of our life. And again, I want to encourage you as I share this, our primary identity as followers of Jesus is the identity that we have through Christ. But there's all these sub identities that we can take on. The second thing, let's see if I can go over here. Yeah, so when you take on an identity, you do what needs to be done in order to become the thing you want to be, right? I'm going to say that again. When you take on an identity, you do what needs to be done to become the thing you want to be or do. So just because I've taken on an identity doesn't mean that I know everything about that, doesn't mean that I'm doing everything about that. But as soon as I take on the identity, I start acting in accordance with that identity. And that could be with anything in life, right? Like silly, crazy examples. I identify as a cat, right? And we have kids in our high schools, at least here in Massachusetts, that are super messed up and they're identifying as cats, but they start to take on the identity. And that's why they're putting litter boxes in our high schools now. In our high school bathrooms, they're putting litter boxes in because they've taken on the identity. It's not just I'm pretending to be a cat, I'm dressing up as a cat for Halloween, but they start to do and be and act in accordance with the identity that they've taken on. And so identity is really, really powerful, right? When we can take on an identity, it can totally shift and change everything in our life. So you ask the question as you start to take on the identity, what would blank do? Right. And again, we've heard this as kids growing up, at least for me, all the time, right? What would Jesus do? If I'm taking on the identity of a follower of Christ, that's my main identity, that's my top level identity. I would ask the question, what would Jesus do? But it's the exact same thing with any other identity that we decide to take on. We ask the same question. What would a missionary do? What would a cat do? What would a man, a woman, a girl, a boy, whatever you want to identify as, right? What would this type of person do? It's the same thing when I started my businesses. I'm a business owner. Well, what would a business owner do? What is the identity of a business owner? Well, they learn about finances and accounting and marketing and sales and all of these other things. And they have to make hard decisions. And sometimes it means they don't do this because they're doing that, right? What would whatever the identity is that you want to take on, what would that identity, that person do? And then you go do it. So, what would a missionary do? And then I go and I act and I start doing the things that a missionary would do, right? So, hopefully, this is sinking in the importance of identity or the impact that an identity can have, and that identity shift can take in your day to day life. And so I want to talk to you guys today about an identity that I would encourage every single one of us to take on, and that's the identity of a legacy leader. And this is an identity that is incredibly important to me. It's an identity that many people in my family have had, and it's been part of the legacy that's passed down is identifying as a legacy leader. But I really would encourage each and every one of you as you go through this event and you start to learn all these different ways of how to leave a lasting legacy and how to do it without sacrificing your family, without neglecting your family, or
Sharing
sacrificing your health, that you take on this
reels.
identity of a legacy leader. And so I want to talk to you about what is a legacy leader. And I've broken this up into a couple of different ways to show you. The first is there's really four different sub identities of a legacy leader. And the first of those sub identities is a visionary leader. I have a picture here of Alexander the Great. He's always been one of my idols ever since I was a kid, but he had a vision. He knew what he wanted to accomplish and he went and did it. He got other people mobilized to come and join him. It wasn't just him going out there and doing something alone, but he was able to be a leader that inspired and motivated people, but inspired and motivated them not just to like do something small, to do something great, literally to take over the entire known world at that time. He says, I am going to take over everything. I will be the ruler of it all, right? And so at 27 years old, he sets out as the leader to take over the entire known world. And so a legacy leader is not necessarily, I'm not saying at all that you should go take over the world, but a legacy leader is somebody who is a visionary leader. They have a vision, they inspire, they motivate, they know where they want to go, and they invite other people to come along with them. The second part of a legacy leader is a compassionate lover. That was supposed to not say and there, but a compassionate lover. Somebody who is going and is moved by compassion. I think of a Mother Teresa, somebody who is a missionary or somebody who's nurturing, somebody who's loving. I think of the stories of Jesus where it says he saw the crowds and he was moved with compassion, that his compassion moved him to do something, that it wasn't just seeing people out there and saying, oh, they're those poor people over there, but their compassion actually moves them to do something. That we are to show love to everybody around us, starting with our homes internally, with our wives, our husbands, our kids, our grandkids, that it starts internally and that we then expand that outward, that we're compassionate lovers, we're missionaries, we're those that are going out there and serving other people, that when we see a need, we want to help and make it help people with it. Sorry, I just got a text from somebody who is going to be joining. All right, cool. Sorry, we have a few people. We had some technical issues this morning, and I wanted to make sure that I was not missing it. So the third piece of an identity leader or legacy leader is a wise elder or guide. So you've got the visionary leader, compassionate lover, a wise elder or guide. I think of Yoda. I think of he's not necessarily the one out there accomplishing everything. He's not the one doing everything, but he's the one where people can come to and they can seek guidance. They can get that wisdom that they need to be able to move through. That's another piece of a legacy leader, is that wise elder or guide, the one who's helping people with what they're going through and not solving all their problems for them, but able to ask questions, able to help them to go through what they need to go through to become the types of leaders that they need to become. That it's not all about saving people and always going out there and saving everybody, but sometimes it's just about being there when people need us, being there to serve, being there to help, being there to listen and ask questions and guide people. And then the fourth piece is a courageous warrior, that the legacy leader is a courageous warrior. He's somebody that goes out where others won't go, crosses cultural boundaries, goes to places that other people might not go to, whether it's the mission field, or maybe it's into politics, or maybe it's into crazy meetings, and they step into places that others might not step into. Sorry, I've got somebody else looking for the link. This is awesome. I love that we have more people wanting to come on, and I'm sending that right now. Awesome. So courageous warrior, right? So these four pieces of a legacy leader, we've got visionary leader, compassionate lover, wise elder and guide, and a courageous warrior. That these four sub identities form that of the legacy leader. That when you can take on all four of these pieces, the combined aspect of that is what a legacy leader is. A visionary leader, somebody who has a vision, knows where they want to go, and they invite others along to accomplish something great with them. A compassionate lover, somebody who sees a need and is moved by compassion to meet that in a kind and loving way. a wise elder and guide, somebody who is there to help people, to ask questions, to guide people, to be able to share their wisdom with others as it's needed. And then a courageous warrior, somebody who goes out and leads the charge, somebody who crosses cultural boundaries, goes to the danger, and runs into the danger to make a difference. That these four pieces are one way that I identify a legacy leader. Another way that I identify a legacy leader, I've got two different images that I like to use a lot of times as I describe legacy leaders. A legacy leader, the first image is that of a bridge. Legacy leaders are bridge builders. This gets into the idea of the visionary leader. They're people that build bridges so that those who come after can cross faster and go further than the one who first walked the path. So they're constantly saying, how do I build a bridge? I don't want to just cross this chasm, but I want to build a bridge and I want to leave something lasting behind so that those that come after me don't have to cross the chasm again. They'll just go over it. They'll go faster, move further, they'll accomplish more, right? I love the image in the scientific world of those who stand on the shoulders of giants, that we don't need to keep learning the same lessons over and over again, but a legacy leader is the kind of person who learns a lesson, they identify something, they do something really great and significant, but they leave it in a way so that others can pick up where they left off. And so the identity of a bridge builder. And one of the things when I get into building a bridge is the importance of structure. Structure and foundations is incredibly important when you think of building a bridge. And so when I like this image in particular because it helps to get a point across that these two columns that are supporting the bridge are incredibly important. How good would a bridge be if it didn't actually have any support? Arlene says this is one of her favorite images and analogies, right? How good is a bridge without any support, right? The whole thing crumbles and it falls apart. As I was putting this together, even last week, I was thinking about, what I was going to be sharing this week, and I was actually thinking about the earthquake in Haiti. So Dale, you were there, Deb, you were there, I was there, Renee, you were in Haiti, and so when I think about the earthquake. I think about foundations and structures. And I was reflecting back of just the importance of solid foundations and how oftentimes we tend to neglect or maybe forget or maybe not think about how important a foundation is. I remember early on in Haiti when we were first working, we did a lot of construction. We built a lot of buildings, we built a lot of houses and schools. And I remember sometimes our Haitian construction crews, they would be really confused, or maybe push back, maybe not confused, but they would push back on why we were spending so much money on a foundation. Why are we spending so much time digging these ditches and putting down these rocks and spending all this money on rebar and all different sizes of rebar? They're like, you're spending more money on the thing that's going under the ground than the thing that's going above the ground. Nobody's ever gonna see it. Like, why not just build the building and we can put a little rock foundation around? That's fine. We'll make it look pretty. But they really pushed back on how much money we were spending on a foundation. And oftentimes I remember having these conversations, and I even at one point, as a kid, I was asking the question, I'm like, why are we doing so much to put into this foundation? Like, it seems like we're putting months of work into digging ditches and putting rocks under the ground. Like, what's the point of it? And I had somebody say at one point, like, well, if there was ever an earthquake or anything like that, like we've got hurricanes and Haiti's on a fault line. Like, one of the reasons that they build the way that they do, experienced construction people, is because maybe there will be another earthquake. And so I brought this up to one of our construction foremen in Haiti at one point, and he says, there hasn't been an earthquake in Haiti in over 200 years. Why would we be spending this kind of money to build a foundation on something that is like probably not going to happen? More than 200 years, there hasn't been an earthquake. Why would we put all this effort and energy into preventing something that's never going to happen? Like, yes, I can understand build the building higher in case of flooding for the hurricanes. We can do that, but why would we spend all this money on a foundation, right? And then 2010, the earthquake hits in Haiti, and 280,000 people die because people didn't understand the importance of foundation. They didn't understand the importance of the unseen things. Even in the building that's built afterwards, how much rebar goes into the walls to reinforce the structure to make sure that it can bend and it can weave and it can move without completely crumbling. How much cement do you put in to make sure that it's not just a pretty building, but it's a solid building? And in that moment, I realized how important foundation is, how important the unseen things are. The structure is so important. We don't know when an earthquake's going to hit. We don't know when a hurricane's going to hit. Like it could be in a split second. And it's really easy to think of something like an earthquake and be able to equate this analogy, but what about in our own ministries? What about in our own lives and our organizations? Are we building solid bridges? Are we building solid organizations? Or do we let the organization grow past the point of what we have a structure for? When we don't have an org chart, we don't know our 3-year vision, we don't have job descriptions. Do we actually know what it is that we're fundraising for? Do we have a 10-year plan? Do we know how to fundraise? Do we have stable funding built for all of the programs that we're doing? Or do we just go start another program and hope that we're going to come up with the funding? Structure is super important if you want to have a lasting legacy. If you want to build an organization that's going to last long term, you have to have stability and structure and good foundations in the middle of that so that one day it doesn't just come in an instant, it all falls apart. And so when I look at this particular image of a bridge, I like to think of these two structures being represented. The one on the left is what you do and how you do it. It's the skills, the tools, the strategies, and the systems. That those things are incredibly important part of building this bridge, leaving the lasting legacy. You have to have the strategies and the systems in place that will support the thing that you're building, the organization that you have. The other pillar on the other side represents who you are, how you think, how you react, and how you respond. That's incredibly important as well. It's your personal development, which you guys are doing here. I applaud you for taking the time to learn and develop yourselves. It's your mindset, your perspective, working through your resistances and your traumas. Tyler's going to talk about that tomorrow afternoon of how do you work through resistance and trauma really fast so that you're not held back by those things. It's taking care of your health and your wholeness and your wellness. It's your confidence. It's who you are as a healthy leader. And so you have to have both of those in order to have a solid structure. If you remove one, the whole thing falls apart. If you remove the other one, the whole thing falls apart, right? It gets shaken and it's all going to be the foundation that holds it together. Is there a healthy leader holding the organization together? And do you have the systems and the tools and the strategies? If you don't have the systems and tools and the strategies and it's just a leader, you're probably not very healthy. Right. And so really important image, that of a bridge. This is what I love that image for a legacy leader. The second image that I like to talk about around the identity of a legacy leader is that of a tree. The tree, I feel like, is the ultimate image of legacy. On the top end of the tree is reproduction and multiplication. A tree will continue to reproduce after its own kind, not only once, but over and over again. Every single seed carries with it the makeup and the ability to create more seed-bearing trees. And I love that idea that it's like a tree grows up. It has a function. It's here for a period of time, maybe 100 years, maybe 200 years. Some trees might be 500 years, right? But it only exists for a season itself. But the seeds that that tree produces will produce more trees. And those trees will produce seeds. And then those seeds will produce trees that produce more trees with seeds and produce more trees with seeds, and all out of one tree. How many trees come from one original tree? How many continue to spread out? Think of apples. Like we've got Granny Smith apples and we've got all these different kinds of apples, but like how many trees can come out of that one seed? The one seed that's planted can then bring out this multiplication effect. It doesn't just produce one tree produces in another tree and produces in another tree, but one tree produces thousands of seeds that can produce thousands of other seeds and can produce thousands of other seeds. And so I love the idea of that, leaving a legacy, the image of the tree and what that conveys in the idea of legacy. The second thing about a tree is it has to have deep roots. And that represents the importance of health, vitality, and ability to withstand storms and be stable. That if a tree doesn't have deep roots as it's growing, then it's just going to topple over, right? It has to grow at the proportionate rate, or else it just topples by the wind. And so that's another big thing when I think of a tree and I think of this idea of being a legacy leader, we need to make sure that we're growing deep at the same time that we're growing high. We oftentimes we want to grow high. We want to be seen as this huge tree, this massive thing. We're doing all of these great things in the world and we're accomplishing all these great things, right? The visionary leader, like, look at how big this is. We're going to build this ministry. We're going to build this organization. We want to help lots of people. We want to be able to provide shade. We want to be able to produce fruit, all these other things. But the depths of our roots have to grow proportionate as we're growing up. We have to also grow internally. And so it conveys the idea of balance, that it's not just about what we're doing out there and helping other people, but it's also important to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, making sure that we are focusing on our own self-care, making sure that we're focusing on our own self-development, that we're not dying out or toppling over. Like, think about a tree that has almost no roots, this massive tree, like one storm comes through and it's gone. And that's not what we want as legacy leaders. We want to be able to withstand the storms. We want to be able to stand firm, stand stable, be around for a really, really long time. So my journey to legacy leadership and this idea, really has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Like I said, 5 generations serving in ministry, 5 generations serving in business and running organizations. And these are just some of my favorite pictures of me and my dad and my family. And one of my favorite ones right here, this is a picture of me and my dad, my grandfather, and my oldest son, Kendrick. And it was all 4 of us. We actually got to speak at a Rotary Club together, and we talked about generational impact. And that was really, really special for me to still be able to look back and see that we had 4 generations of us all able to do a presentation together. Was just super cool. This is a picture of my dad and I in Albania. We were doing music together at the Stevens Center. Chris Dacus is actually going to be sharing later on today. And so we were doing a musical performance together there. And, yeah, I love this idea of legacy. These are some other pictures of just those who have gone before, honoring them. This one up in the top left, this is my great great grandmother. I showed you a picture of my great grandmother earlier, but this is my great great grandmother. This is her in her Salvation Army hat up here. And so she served in the Salvation Army. My great Uncle Bob and Aunt Judy served in Vietnam and Taiwan for I think it was almost 40 years between the 2 countries as missionaries. And then they actually left the mission field and started just serving. They became the wise elders and guides that would travel all over the world, and they would counsel other missionaries and other ministry leaders when they were struggling through things. And my Aunt Judy's actually the one who has mainly inspired me. And I'm just going to share this here because it's a good spot to share. She's the one who mainly has inspired me to have Summer come in later today and talk about how churches should handle the issue of pornography. When I asked Bob and Judy, I had asked them in an interview last year if they could share what's the number one thing that they would tell missionaries, ministry leaders, people who are serving, each of them, what's the number one thing that they would tell or share as a lesson or a cautionary tale. And my Uncle Bob, he said the number one thing that he would tell missionaries, pastors, or people who are serving in ministry is you need to take a day off every single week. You need to take care of yourself. You need to have that time to refresh, to recuperate, to have some fun, and not just be working all the time. That was his number one thing. My Aunt Judy, her number one thing that she shared was about pornography. She said, you have no idea how rampant it is, not only in the lay people in our ministries, but the people who are running our ministries, the people who are running missions. And maybe some of you are dealing with that, and that's absolutely okay, right? Like, I've dealt with that as a thing as well. And it's not always easy to know, how do you get out of it and how do you deal with it and how should the church deal with it? And especially being leaders, it's one of those things we can't really admit to other people because, like, what are they going to think? Are they all going to leave our church, right? And so, but that was one of the things that my Aunt Judy said is out of everything that she could possibly say as a suggestion, she says, you have to work on the issue of pornography. We need to focus on the issue of pornography in our ministries, in our churches, in our organizations, and we have to not just hide it and keep it hidden aside, but it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed in the right way. And so Summer's going to be coming in to talk later on today, and I'm super, super excited for her to share from her own experience in her marriage and in her life and in her ministry. It's something that she's just incredibly passionate about, helping to know how do we deal with the issue of pornography in the right way, not in a way where we beat people over the head or anything else. But I'll let her share more. But it's just going to be, it was actually inspired by my Aunt Judy that I was like, I need to have somebody at the summit that's going to talk about this topic specifically. This is a picture of my grandfather. And then this one under here is my grandfather and grandmother. They were playing music at the Salvation Army. My grandfather pastored his own church with my grandmother here in central Massachusetts. These are pictures of my great grandparents who worked in the Salvation Army. And then again, this picture of 4 generations of us, my mom and my dad, just leaving that lasting legacy, right? The idea of legacy leadership. And my journey to legacy leadership, there was really, 2 things that kind of inspired me to really move into this next phase. And the biggest one was when my dad passed away at the beginning of 2021. Most of you guys probably know the story, but welcome, Sue. Yes, please. Yes, Sue's here. Introduce yourself, Sue. Tia's here. You can drop hello, Tia. Tia's my sister, actually, and she's amazing. She was also in the earthquake in Haiti. And Tia is also carrying on this legacy in absolutely amazing ways. And so Tia, hi, I'm so glad that you're here. And if you want to share anything at all in the chat or anywhere, you are more than welcome. You always have place on any of my events. And so yeah, Tia is amazing. So this idea of legacy leadership, came after my dad passed away, and it was very sudden. Um, and it was really, he ended up getting COVID. COVID was brought on. He ended up having a heart attack that was brought on by COVID and passed away in the hospital at the beginning of 2021. And it was all in the course of about 2 or 3 weeks. It was very sudden, not planned. We didn't think it was going to happen. We thought he was going to recover. And I found myself in this place of wondering, how in the world am I going to carry on my dad's legacy? What does legacy mean? What does it mean to carry on what he left behind? What was his legacy? And the big thing that I realized through a number of months of working through this is that legacy is left in people ultimately, right? We have organizations, and organizations create the framework for relationships, but it's ultimately through those relationships and in people that legacy is carried on. It's not an organization that's carrying on Scott Long's legacy. It's his son and his daughter and his family and his grandkids and other people, the same way that he carried on his dad's legacy and his grandparents' legacy and his great grandparents' legacy, right? That it's the same way that we as Christians carry on Christ's legacy, that he has left behind that legacy through relationships that continue to get passed along and passed through. But it's oftentimes when we go through these hard times, we go through these difficult times, that we realize, like, we need to change something. And so I realized at that time, one of the big things, and this is part of what motivated the idea of leaving a lasting legacy without sacrificing your health, is that I saw my dad leave an amazing legacy. He had such an impact in the world, and it was absolutely amazing what he accomplished and what he left behind. Not only in the organization that we ran together, but in so many people all over the world. Like, I still am meeting people to this day that are like, I knew your dad. And it's at like random spots. Like, I'll be at an airport and somebody will see my boarding pass and they're like, oh, Taryn Long, are you related to Scott Long? Like, I used to know Scott. He used to travel through at the airport, right? Like, just crazy, right? He left this amazing legacy in every single person that he met through all of these different relationships. But he did that at the expense of his health. And I am a big believer that, I'm not going to go back and try to say, like, well, what if this had happened or what if that had happened? I'm going to just trust that God knows what happened, what was supposed to happen. I'm not going to try to mess with trying to even wrap my mind around any of it. But I do have the thought often that, if he was healthier, would he have been around longer? Would he have been around for his kids, for his grandkids? Would he have gotten to know his great grandkids if he had actually taken the time to take care of himself? to practice self-care, to work through trauma, to work through the difficult things that were going on, maybe to exercise or eat healthier. And so it's not just about leaving a legacy, but it's leaving a legacy without sacrificing your health. And so over the last 3 years, I've invested literally hundreds and hundreds of hours in learning how to leave a lasting legacy without sacrificing your health, how to be a healthy leader, how to work through trauma, how to be mentally well, physically well, to be in a place where I can leave a lasting legacy without sacrificing my health. And then the second thing that led me to, just the intentions of this event is to do it without neglecting your family. At the end of 2020, I recognized that I had a pattern in my own life of putting everybody else above my own family. That if there was a need in Haiti or in Albania or in India or anywhere else in the world, in my own backyard, my church needed help with something, that I would often respond by saying, "Hey, Katie, kids, like, I've got to go and help at the church. Katie, I got to go to Haiti. I got to go do this other thing." And I was so focused on the mission that I was doing that I was neglecting my family oftentimes. And I remember a time being in Haiti and talking to a friend of mine that was on a trip with me. And I said, this was probably 10 years ago. I said, "Ron, I feel like a terrible father. I feel like I'm totally failing. Like I'm doing all of these amazing things and accomplishing all of these amazing things, but I'm not spending time with my kids. I'm not around with my wife when she needs me." And then going through COVID, it was another realization. I was literally sleeping at my office. I was working 18 to 22 hours a day, sometimes like just taking a nap on my desk when I could. And there would be weeks that went by trying to bring the ministry through COVID and help all these other people that I wasn't even seeing my wife and kids. And so when my dad passed away, I realized, just kind of going through that whole experience, that I also needed to make sure that I was prioritizing my family, that I could leave a lasting legacy, I could do mission, I could help other people, I could make an impact in the world without neglecting my family. And so that's a big part of my value system that I've brought in, and a big part of what it means to be a legacy leader is recognizing that the first most important people that you're going to invest in as your legacy are your own kids and your grandkids, and making sure that you're staying healthy enough to be able to do that for the long term. And so that's just a big part of it for me. Taking care of yourself is so important. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to share with you guys something that I had put together, and this is a manifesto in a sense. This is a vision statement, an identity statement of what a legacy leader is. And so I'm going to just read through this and just kind of walk through some pieces of this together really quick. And then I would actually invite you to say this with me. And so let me just read through it once, and then we'll all say it together. And this can be just the identity of legacy leader that I would encourage you to take on as well. And so when I summarize everything that I just said about legacy leadership, it all really boils down to this manifesto. I am a powerful warrior, right? Goes back to that courageous warrior, like going where other people might not go. I'm steadfast and unyielding. With dauntless courage, I venture where others dare not. So this whole idea here is just talking about being that courageous warrior, the one who's going to be steadfast and unyielding, move into the fight instead of away from it. The next part, I'm a sentinel of enduring vision. I refuse to settle, kindling the fire of relentless progress. I beckon others to rise up and join me on the journey. And so that's the whole idea of that visionary leader, that we always have an enduring vision, not settling, but always having that fire burning in us, and then inviting others to come and join us on the journey, that we're not just out there accomplishing a vision by ourselves, but that we are inviting others to be part of the journey with us as well. My presence offers a place of safety as my love echoes 1 Corinthians 13. I radiate both serenity and courage, leading with wisdom and empathy, right? And so this first part, my presence offers a place of safety as my love echoes 1 Corinthians 13. That goes back to that compassionate lover, the one who is saying, I'm going to create a place of safety. I'm going to make sure that I'm loving as I walk out everything that I'm doing, because if I just go out there and try to accomplish a huge mission and I do it without love, nothing, right? And so we need to make sure that that core of love and safety is part of who we are as legacy leaders. I lead with wisdom and empathy goes back to that wise elder, the wise guide, the Yoda, right? That we radiate serenity, wisdom, empathy, fortified by our connection to God. And I believe that again, that's an incredibly important piece of being a true legacy leader is that we have a connection with God, that ultimately our wisdom is coming from Him, not from within ourselves. That as we walk out in life that we are connected to God. Our vision ultimately should be coming from Him and not ourselves. Our wisdom should be coming from Him and not ourselves. The only ability for us to be able to actually walk out the love that's in 1 Corinthians 13 is through our connection with God. The courage that we find to be able to run into the fire instead of away from it comes from our connection with God. And so that piece is incredibly important. And then this last piece, going back to that compassionate lover, embodying selflessness, giving voice to the weak, the poor, the needy, the broken, and the distressed. And so I know that just about every single person on this call, this is your like cry as well. This is the manifesto that so many of you live out these things as well. And I love to have a manifesto or an identity that it boils down to that we can say, I'm a legacy leader. But when I say I'm a legacy leader, it means these things. This is what I'm essentially saying. When I say legacy leader, I'm communicating this sentiment. And so I would encourage you, if you want to, you can stand up. You can turn your cameras on if you want to. You can, something just came back up. So much better than the Communist Manifesto. Yeah, absolutely. Did too much ministry and not prioritize your young family at that point. Yeah, it's so crazy, right? And we learn these lessons, and if we don't impart them to other people, then somebody else is going to repeat the same thing. And so it's important to make sure that we're actually learning and then imparting to other people, which again is part of that legacy. So I would invite you to stand up where you are. If you want to turn on your camera, you can. And I would just invite you to say this with me, but not just as this, like, I'm just reading it. Like, I'm a powerful warrior. I'm steadfast and unyielding. With dauntless courage, I venture where others dare not. Like, I want you to actually feel this. I want you to take it into your body. I want this to be like a war cry. Like, I am a powerful warrior, steadfast and unyielding, right? Use your hands, use your body. And I want you to really take this on. If you want to be a legacy leader and you want to really take on this identity, I invite you to say this with me. So we're going to go ahead and start. I am a powerful warrior. I'm steadfast and unyielding. With dauntless courage, I venture where others dare not. As a sentinel of enduring vision, I refuse to settle, kindling the fire of relentless progress. I beckon others to rise and join me on this journey. My presence offers a place of safety as my love echoes 1 Corinthians 13. I radiate both serenity and courage, leading with wisdom and empathy. I am fortified by my connection with God. I embody selflessness, giving voice to the weak, the poor, the needy, the broken, and the distressed. Awesome. Yeah, I love this. I love this idea of legacy leader. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to actually just leave this up. Let's take a 2-minute break. If anybody needs to use the restroom, grab a coffee, get up and stretch. We're just going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back in. We're going to talk about learning from others, mentors, guides, and coaches. This is probably the number one lesson that I've learned in my entire life. This is probably the number one key to all the success that I've ever had in my entire life is going to come from this next lesson. And so I would really, really encourage you to just run it out quick, come right back. Don't take a lot of time. You don't want to miss this next piece of what I'm going to be sharing with you guys.